Welcome to the Brigham Young University Family History Library webinar series. My name is Braden Knutson. I'll be your host for this webinar today. We'd like to welcome you and thank you for joining us. We'd like to ask you to answer a couple of our polls we've got down at the bottom. Let us know where you're listening from today and how you heard about today's webinar, and we'll go through a few of our announcements as we're doing that. Our next webinar will be on Tuesday, February 14th at 9:30 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. And that webinar will be by James Tanner, so we hope you can join us for that webinar. It will be in a couple weeks from now. Because we have Roots Tech coming up next week. So next week we won't be holding any webinars in preparation, and it'll just be a pretty busy week for most of us around here. If you have not been able to register yet for that event, there is a link on our main webpage where you can go and register for Roots Tech and come join us and see us there. It'll be a lot of fun. And then just a reminder, at the end of the month, we will be doing a question and answer session with Catherine Grant on the family tree. And if you can submit questions ahead of time, that would be much appreciated. There's a link on the February schedule for that as well. So today we'll be pleased to hear from James Tanner, who will be giving a presentation titled How to Manage Very Large Genealogy Collections and Files. James Tanner has a bachelor's degree in Spanish and a master's degree in linguistics from the University of Utah. He received a Juris Doctor degree in law at Arizona State University. He served for 2 years as an intelligence analyst for the U.S. Army and 39 years as an Arizona trial attorney. He has previously owned a retail computer business and an Apple Macintosh software company. James has over 35 years of experience in genealogical research and is an avid blogger of Genealogy Star blog and Rejoice and Be Exceeding Glad. He served for 10 years as a missionary at the Mesa, Arizona Family Search Library and is currently serving at the BYU Family History Library. He has presented at expos and conferences around the U.S. and Canada. James has 7 children and 33 grandchildren. So we'll turn the time over to James now. The screen's loading. Remind you that there is a question and comments box on the right-hand side, and we will make sure that any questions are answered by the end of the presentation. We'll turn the time over to James.
Very large genealogy collections and files will be the topic today from the Brigham Young University Family History Library in Provo, Utah. And it is a balmy 45-degree temperature outside right now. All the students are walking around in their flip-flops and shorts. When we talk about very large genealogy collections, I think the first question that obviously comes up is, what is very large? What are we talking about here? Well, it's obviously this is something very, very subjective. I've had people come up to me in years past and say things like this, I have 250,000 people in my database on my computer. And I go, that's interesting. Are you related to all those people? Really, there's some interesting here, but we're really not talking about large files, because a large file, most of the genealogy programs out there, in fact, all of them, store the information in text format, which means that these are very, very small files. You can basically have a file of 100,000 people, and it doesn't take up hardly any memory at all compared to images and graphics, movies, anything else that you're used to seeing now on the internet. Those files are relatively large compared to what we have when we talk about our core data file. So when we're talking about very large genealogy files, there's a lot of other things that go into it besides packing some kind of a huge number of names into a genealogical database program. So this is kind of a basic thing. A large genealogy file usually contains a large number of entries, and I would point out that large is ambiguous, and as I mentioned a moment ago, it's very, very subjective, and that they can hold a lot of individuals or a lot of support documents. Well, if you start adding in copies, for instance, scanned images of all of your source documents and photographs of your family and all of that kind of information, then you're going to immediately begin to have a file that starts to grow sort of exponentially with the number of documents and attachments which you have to your file. Just a bare bones file full of names, like I mentioned, is not going to be very large, but it's when you start adding documents. But even if you have a whole lot of names in your file, or you have a very large, physically large, taking up a lot of memory space on your computer file, both of these can be difficult to manage. And so we're going to talk a little bit about both kind of things, approaches to both of those things. So the process, first of all, the process of acquiring all this information takes an enormous amount of time. And so if you're in the situation where you're just beginning your genealogical investigations, you may think that you have a lot of information, but if you stay around for a while, like some of us have been around for years, you'll find out that what it's like to accumulate a lot of information and a lot of documents and things. So it takes years to research and accumulate all this information. Now, there's another problem here that needs to be addressed, and that is right today there are millions, literally millions of family trees online. We have huge programs that host family trees like Ancestry and Find My Past and My Heritage, and Genie has a family tree. There are the family trees programs differ in very, very different in the way that they approach it. Family Search Family Tree, for example, is what's called a unified family tree. There's one family tree, and everyone is a member of that one family tree, everyone who uses the program. That's the same way it is with Genie.com and WikiTree and other large unified single family tree type programs. On the other hand, when we get into the other family history, big family history database programs like Ancestry, they literally have hundreds of thousands, probably millions of individual family trees, just as MyHeritage has and Find My Past. And there's other hosting, family tree hosting programs out there. So these family trees, these individual family trees, one way to get a very, very large family tree is simply disregard any reality of your actual relationship to the people that you're dealing with, and just start copying family trees because you happen to share a name with someone who has another family tree. There are people that do this, and that's one way of getting like 100,000 people in your family tree rather quickly. So when we're talking here, we're talking about people who are more, let's say, obsessed with accuracy than numbers. And so what I'm talking about here is not necessarily the people who are more focused on numbers. You know, one of the most common questions I get when people hear that I'm involved in genealogy, and they always say, well, what do you do? And I say, mostly genealogy. If they know what that is, they say, oh, how far back have you got your line? And if they don't ask that question, they always say, how many names have you found in your family? And I go, well, neither one of those is relevant, but that's kind of the idea there. Well, some of us get past that point where we begin to worry more about how well the relationships are established and how detailed our documentation is than we do how many names total we happen to have in our family tree, or how far back it goes, which is another interesting question. Well, obviously it goes all the way back to Adam, but why am I going to say that? No. If you're worried about that one, we have another video on the BYU Family History Library YouTube channel about that. But right now, what we're talking about is really the accumulation of papers and documents and photographs and all the stuff that genealogists acquire over a lifetime of doing research. So it may take you years to digitize and to organize those files. So what are we talking about here with digitizing? Well, we have devices like cameras, digital cameras and scanners today that will take in a digital photo, an image of a document, and that image can then be uploaded to a programs, such as Family Search has a program called Memories that's part of the Family Search family tree. And they're hosted there on FamilySearch.org for free, and many of us are in the process of archiving, in a sense, our files of documents and photographs up onto the FamilySearch.org Memories program. But doing that takes a great deal of time. In my case, for example, the last couple of years, I've hired some of my grandchildren to come in and scan documents, and then also to upload those same documents to the Family Search Memories program. So that's one way to approach it. Some people don't have that, either don't have grandchildren who are willing to do that, or they don't have the financial means to hire their grandchildren to do it. So they have to do it themselves if it's going to get done. Well, we're going to be talking about that digitizing effort, but that's basically what we're doing, the process we're doing now to back up our files and assure that they're preserved. And then once you have all this information, it takes a considerable amount of time to maintain and back up those files. Right now, today, for me to back up my files that are sitting on my computer, the last backup I did, I had well over 1 million files on my computers, and it took 6.5 days to do a backup of that at a high-speed computer with the fastest interfaces we have today onto 8 terabyte hard drives. So this can begin to be a big consideration when we're trying to move a lot of information. And I mentioned, unless you inherited all your stuff from somebody, it basically took you all those many years to accumulate it. Now, what does happen, though, is that in the course of doing genealogy for a considerable period of time, you probably get marked in your family as the person who wants all that old stuff. And so they will probably start wondering if you would please come and get their stuff from them because they don't want it in their house anymore, and assume that you probably want it, which is probably correct, because as you become more involved in genealogy, you begin to appreciate the need to preserve these artifacts and documents and certificates and things from the family. And if people are going to throw them away, you begin to worry about that, and then you are out there trying to get them to give you everything. Well, that is another reason why these files and these piles of documents seem to grow, because of that. Now, over the years, for example, we've been updating our computer equipment. So, some of us have been around on computers for a long time, and we've been using our old, started out with like Apple IIs or Commodore 64s or VIC-20 computers or whatever, one of the old computer systems. And then we've been updating since then. Some of us are kind of stuck in a time warp, and we're still using Windows 8 on an old PC, or even older, Windows 7 or Windows older than that. Some of us are, just seem to be able to use the same computer forever, but there's a danger in that, and the danger, of course, is that all of a sudden you'll wake up someday and either the computer won't work or none of the programs that are available will work on your computer, and that you will have no way of connecting your computer to anybody else's computers. So these are some things that we have to live with. And secondly, another challenge is that as we have the data that we've entered into our computers, we have to worry about moving that data to newer programs. Classic example that happened to me, I've been keeping a journal on the computer for years, and I was using a program on an old Apple computer, on a Macintosh, an old Macintosh computer. It was a program called MacWrite, which was a very, very popular program on Mac computers. In fact, the computers came with a free copy of MacWrite, so you could use that sort of free. I had a lot of my files in MacWrite, and as time passed, I had them on the computer. And one day I decided to go back and check my old files, and found out that none of the programs that were currently on my computer, uh, because MacWrite had been abandoned by Apple and was no longer available, none of my programs would even recognize the fact that they were a file. The MacWrite files weren't. The term here would be readable by any of the current programs that I had. And in effect, what we had to do to solve that problem was we happened to be kind of out of inertia, storing a bunch of our old computers in the back room. And so we had 4 or 5 computers sitting back there, and we went and resurrected one of the older ones, and then using the older computers, we updated the programs, the files, found one that would read MacWrite files, and then upgraded the files. It was like the end of the world kind of situation here. If we had not found that older computer, I would simply have lost all of that information. Well, of course, then I thought, well, I'm going to get really paranoid about this whole problem, and I'm going to put it into a different format, more general format. So I put it into Microsoft Word, I thinking, of course, that Microsoft might be around for a while. Well, I was right. The company's still around, but unfortunately, my version of Microsoft Word was also abandoned by Microsoft. And at the last minute, I discovered that none of the current versions of Microsoft Word would read the old files. So I went through that process again, only this time it was a software solution. I found a program called OpenOffice that would read the old files. And what I finally did was transfer all those old files into text files, which are like generic, basic computer language type files. And even today, almost every word processing program, any kind of text program, will read a text file. So now they're in a file format that's not going to get outdated. But we're really faced with that problem. We're faced with the problem that technology is changing and things happen, and we begin to think about moving our data to online database programs. We don't want to. We want to make sure that they're backed up in a way that we can retrieve those regardless of technological changes. And then there's also the task of tagging and identifying all of the documents and photos. It depends on how let's say how popular you become among your family members as a place to dump all this stuff. You could end up with literally thousands of photos and documents. And then it becomes a major issue, just like going into business as a library, that you're going to have to be able to take care of this stuff. And then we've mentioned the paper, of course. We get paper. There's, most of the documents that we inherit and find and make copies of course, are on paper. And so we may have these huge piles and boxes of paper. I have literally gone into roomfuls of paper, wall to wall, floor to ceiling, that genealogists have accumulated when their heirs have come to me and asked me to come and tell them what is in that pile of stuff that they had in that room. So this is kind of the situation that we're confronted with. We're confronted with today a lot of electronic files that are sitting on our computers or that we've scanned or that we've created, and plus we've added in a lot of paper that's out there. Well, the answer, of course, from my perspective is to take all that paper and digitize it. That does not mean I'm going to throw it away, because I'm not throwing away original photographs. I'm not throwing away original documents, letters, anything like that. Anything that has a valid historical, something that's validly historical. So, but the problem here, of course, is differentiating between the paper that really has no value and the paper that has a lot of value. So this is the first step in getting control of this whole system, is to digitize or scan all of that information. Now today I mentioned we have scanners. A scanner like this is called a flatbed scanner. It has a lid, it has a glass plate that's like a copy machine. You put the document down on the glass plate, it turns it into a computer file, and you choose which kind of computer file you'd like to have saved and put it out on your computer or store it on your hard drive or on your flash drive or on your or upload it to the internet. So this is the way. Now the alternative, of course, is to use a digital camera. There's some new technology coming out that emphasizes using smartphone cameras. Most of the newer smartphone cameras are adequate for taking pictures of documents, and so we're really into an age where we can really take a lot of pictures quickly, scan a lot of documents quickly. Scanning process is a process that you can speed up considerably by investing more money. A scanner like this, a flatbed scanner like this, actually starts at about well under $100 for a flatbed scanner that will work with your computer. But they go on up in price, and you can spend as much money as you like. We have scanners available to us that are into the tens of thousands of dollars. And we also know about scanners that cost into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. So, there's really no upper limit, but there are some really inexpensive ways to solve these problems. Okay, so here was the important number one important step on this whole process, and that is to quell your urge or dispel the urge you might have to be tidy. Genealogy is by its nature untidy, and tidiness is not a virtue in the genealogical community. But it is to be, clean is fine, keeping track of everything is fine, but simply throwing things away because you have too much paper sitting around is not a good idea. We'd like to disabuse people of the idea that just because you have a pile of paper that is per se messy and you've got to get rid of it. The answer is no. It may be valuable historical original documents that need to be preserved. And a lot of people, one of the most common questions I get at this point is, let's suppose that you've digitized all that stuff. What are you going to do with the originals? The answer is still the same. We keep the originals. They are valuable historical artifacts, and we would like to see them preserved if at all possible. It's just the process that we're going through. We're very, very oriented that way as genealogists to preserving the documents and certificates and all of those things, regardless of whether they've been digitized. Digitizing them makes them available and gives a backup so that if that original single document is lost, it's not lost the information is not lost. The document itself is separate from the information that's contained on the document. So the document itself has some intrinsic value. Now, part of the process of looking at this, of course, is determining which of the documents you have that value, have that intrinsic value, and which do not have intrinsic value. Okay, so we're going to follow some guidelines from somebody who has some, believability and authority. And in this case, it's the Library of Congress. The loc.gov is the website. And they have, they've redesigned their website. So you may have to look to do some searching in their search box or search field on the loc.gov startup page to find the preservation section. But they have a major part of the Library of Congress is their preservation section. And in the preservation section, they have explicit and very helpful and very concise instructions on all types of documents, on photographs, on books, on physical items like cloth and dresses and keepsakes and all these kinds of things. They have links out to all of the major archives and restoration and conservation people, and it's a very detailed website with very specific instructions for people who are simply trying to preserve their own family heirlooms, their family documents. So I found this to be just sort of the go-to and go back to many times website is the Library of Congress. They do a very good job of telling us what to do with all that stuff. Okay, so then we have the question is that we're going to have to address, because I've talked about it now a couple of times already in this presentation, and that is, why would we digitize all this stuff? What are we going to do that for? Well, the first one is that a document, as a paper document, has a single place in, geographically speaking, a single location on the face of the earth, and it can be viewed by only those people who physically come in contact with the document. So if I have a copy of an important certificate or a very important letter of the family from one of our ancestors, um, and if nobody knows I have it, first of all, then nobody's going to see it. Then there's going to be no way for anybody to look at it except I either make a copy of it or I digitize it and put it up on a website that allows other members of my family to look at and view the same document. Well, that's kind of the primary reason we have this. Preservation is always a concern, but sharing the information with others in our extended family is extremely important. Now, we have to address here an issue that comes up all the time when we're talking about handling these larger files and documents and things, is that there are going to be family members who resent the fact that you have all this stuff, either because they think it's messy, or because they don't understand the importance of it, or because they would like it and they think you're cheating them out of having copies of the stuff because you've got it locked up in your file cabinet or in your boxes. When you put it online and make it available to everyone digitized, then that gets rid of a lot of those issues of ownership and who should have the documents. Once they're readily available and everybody can see them and they're there and they can read them and look at them, uh, physical possession of the original document may still be an issue, but it's simply not as great an issue as it would be otherwise. And then, of course, as I mentioned, the secondary and probably just as important reason for doing this digitizing is to preserve the files. There's a saying that goes around on the internet, and that is, anything you put on the internet is going to be virtually permanent, that there will always seem to be a copy of that floating around somewhere on the internet. And it will be even more important to put them onto a website that will give you a degree of confidence that not only will the website be maintained, but that the images will be maintained in a way that they'll be free and accessible by anyone who wants to look at them. Um, when you look at this, when you think to yourself, well, nobody in my immediate family, none of the relatives that I know are at all interested in any of my documents or any of my work in genealogy. In fact, not only do they want to ignore me, but some of them are, not only ignore me, but they are antagonistic of me because of my actions. Well, the problem here is that you may not know that there is a larger family out there, due to descendants or people who are related to you, who would be more than happy to have access to your documents if you were to share them online. So it's very important that we get into that. And this is the kind of the clinger, the closer on this is that they take up a lot less physical space if they're sitting on your hard drive or on your flash drive or online than they would if they're sitting in boxes. Now, I'm, literally, but if you're going through all of those documents, you really have to make a decision as to whether or not this particular document has any historical um, uh, value as a document, not because of the information that's on there. For example, let me tell you contrast in here. A family group record, okay, a document that was filled out by someone about a particular family. That is information. The document itself has no value apart from the information that's contained on it, unless it happens to be printed on some, fabulously wealthy, unusual format, or on a piece of paper, or tattooed on the back of something. You know, I mean, there's ways, of course, that could be made into an artifact, but these are elaborately, the old samplers that you see from the 1800s, 1700s, where they cross-stitched in the names of all of the people in the family. I don't know if you've ever seen one of those, but those are artifacts. Those are things you want to preserve. But there's a very simple one. If you've got a huge stack of photocopies and you really want to get rid of it, fine. Digitize it all, then you'll have it. Then you won't regret losing any of the information if you realize that you've thrown something away, and then simply turn it into recycling. Or if you happen to be in a less progressive area, you may end up burning it or throwing it in the garbage. Okay, now, the reality of what we're living with today is that computers assist us with managing large files of both documents and numbers of people, of individuals. Um, the story that I tell here has to do with my great-grandmother, who spent 30 years of her life or more accumulating family information, thousands of names about her family, and all sorts of very, very interesting documents and things. But the reality of it is that during that 30-year period, she really managed to go through and redo the genealogy for everybody 3 times because she didn't realize what she had. And there comes a time when paper genealogy just exceeds the ability of a person to understand and appreciate the relationships. We start getting into people who have, a 4-generation pedigree chart, and then they go to a 5-generation pedigree chart, and they go to an 8-generation, and they go to a 12-generation pedigree chart. I tell you, the problem here is that you're getting into what we call the data crunch. You're getting so much information that it becomes almost impossible to handle. The reality is that as you go back in time, the number of your ancestors, even in direct line ancestors, doubles every generation. It's 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, 512, etc. Okay, so you are eventually, the longer you do the genealogy, the more likely it is you're going to just simply end up with so much information that you can't even figure out what you have. That's why we have computers. The world recognized this concept of information as a idea, concept apart from what people knew, but that there was actually a problem out there of managing the world's information. And once that occurred, then developing computers was the response to handling these vast amounts of information that needed to be handled. Okay, so genealogy databases automatically manage those files. People talk about, how do I get organized in genealogy? And the key to organization is entering your information into a database program that's already structured and already organized. So in this case, I have a screenshot of Family Search Family Tree. Why? Number one, it's free. Number two, it's unified, which means you're not going to be duplicating work that's been done by others. And number three, it's probably going to be preserved for as long as anything else in the world could be expected to be preserved. So this is a reality of the Family Search Family Tree. But even if you choose some other program, the programs themselves are structured so that they organize the information that you have. Now, what is the key here? The key here is that the program provides a place for each person within your family structure. People's kind of, there's a little bit of feedback and blowback here on this kind of issue, because there are people who say, well, what about non-traditional families? What about families where you have blended families, things like this, and other kinds of family formations? Well, understand that a good genealogy program, like the Family Search Family Tree, or like some of the other online database programs, or the standalone computer programs, taking those into account. They recognize relationships where the beyond biological, foster of children who are being cared for by their grandparents, children who are adopted, all these kinds of relationships, and multiple marriages, and all of these kinds of things are incorporated within the context of these more advanced database programs. So they can unlimit. This program, for example, is designed to handle every person who ever lived on the face of the earth, literally. That's literally the whole way that the program was designed. So billions of people can be put into this program. It already has over 1 billion people in it, but billions more could be added, and the program would simply scale up to handle all of that information. That's the way it's designed right now. So they can manage an unlimited number of individuals and documents. So the amount of information that you have can be channeled into a program like this, and it will then be manageable. You'll be able to find what you have in an organized fashion. And also, one of the interesting things about Family Search that was just implemented is any individual within the program you can open up, and there's a little thing that says show my relationships, and you can click on that link and it will calculate all of your relationship to that person back 15 generations. So you can automatically keep track of where you are and who you're dealing with by just clicking on that, and it tells you, oh, that's who I'm related to. Oh, this is my great-great-great-grandfather's brother's wife's father, this kind of thing. You can work your way through all of that because the program shows you how you're related to all these people. And once again, to emphasize this, that genealogical database programs themselves, absent these other media items of photographs and scanned documents and things like that, take up relatively little disk space. So it's not like you're going to use up all the computer space on your computer with those. But if you start putting in videos and you start putting in photographs, that's the primary reason why my files are so huge, is because of the huge number of photographs which I have in my files and the scanned images that I have from all of the documents I've accumulated. So scanned photos and documents are the ones that take up the space. They're the ones that are going to fill your basket if you're looking at your hard drives and things like that. Now, the good news here is that the storage space is getting to be ridiculously cheap. We can get massive amounts of photos. So my photo file right now, just the photographs, not all the other documents and other things that I have, but my photo file right now is 1.1 terabyte with almost 100,000 images in it. That's just the photos I have. So now what am I going to do with that? Well, this is another important point that happens here, because the larger we get the files, the greater it needs to back it up. Here's the question you ask yourself. How long would it take you to duplicate all of the information that you have in your basic files on your computers? If you lost it completely, if a meteorite fell out of the sky or a tornado came along and tore your house to shreds, and you found bits and pieces of your computer scattered around the countryside, how much time would it take you to redo it all? Well, the answer from a person who had a backup, an adequate backup, would be the time it took me to restore my backup. The reason why is because they would be keeping their backup off the location, so the backup would not be physically located on the place where the programs were, where the computer was located. So the meteorite hits or the tornado comes through, and the file is sitting on someone else's computer or someplace else in the world, and it may even have multiple copies out there that they can't do. Now, you can do this in almost a physical way, is what I've done in the past, and that is I can get a storage device, a hard drive, and copy all my documents and files onto it, and then hand it to one of my children who live in a different state, or one of my relatives that I would trust living in a different state. And then we have created a more assurance that if there is a problem, that the file will survive. Now, the way we have this to do this today is we can also back up online to give it up to the internet and put it out in what we call the cloud, or all of these combined computers that are out there. And there are any number of storage companies that are relatively inexpensive that will do that. Today, some of the companies are offering a huge amount of free storage, and we can utilize some of the free storages. So unless you have just an absolutely horrendously large file, you may not even need to pay to have it backed up online. Okay, so here's one of the problems, that your computer may run out of disk space. In other words, you have an internal hard drive inside your computer now, or maybe you've even gotten a newer computer and have a flash drive, internal flash drive. But you find out that that information is constantly being used up. There's just too many things you have on your computer, and all of a sudden you see this. You go to save a file, and you see an error message from your computer that says insufficient disk space, and you're out of luck in trying to save what you've done. Okay, well, today, let's give an example of that. Over my lifetime of doing genealogy, I've accumulated 1.2 million files, as I mentioned earlier, and they take 6.4 terabytes of disk space. Okay, that's terabyte is 1,000 gigabytes. So that's 6,000 gigabytes, more than 6,000 gigabytes of disk space. And if I were to have that many years ago, when I bought the first hard drive, 40 megabyte hard drive for $350 or $500 or whatever it was back then, I would be now, most of my net income would be in storage devices. But today, and I already mentioned this, that using that technology, it takes me 6 days to do a full backup. Okay. So you can check to see the size of these files. So if you're worried about this, all of a sudden you're starting to think, well, what is he talking about? Am I going to run out of space? How much space do I have? How big are my files? How much information am I really storing? You can, using an Apple computer, you right-click on the file and you get what's called Get Info. If you don't know how to right-click on an Apple mouse, it's on the right-hand side of the Apple mouse. And if you're using a trackpad, it's 2 fingers on the trackpad as a right-click. Okay, but that's Apple. Right-click, Get Info, and that will tell you the size of your file. Files that are measured in megabytes are very small. Files that are measured in gigabytes are relatively larger. And you probably, if you come up with a terabyte size file, you probably have already exceeded the internal capacity of your computer and know about it. Okay, if you have a Windows computer, you right-click on the icon, and most Windows mice have right-hand buttons, so that's not a problem. And view the properties, and it will tell you the same information about your files, how big those files are, how many megabytes, or gigabytes, or whatever they are. You can do that with your whole hard drive or an external hard drive. So now comes the crunch. How much is all this going to cost you? If you have that amount of information. Well, let's look at some of the prices today. The last time I checked, which was probably a couple of weeks ago when I put together this presentation, is a hard drive. That's called spinning media. That's when you have like what's internally a hard drive in your computer, or an external hard drive that you buy that looks like a box, either a small box or a big box, but it looks like a box with a cable. The hard drive today, an 8 terabyte hard drive, which by the way is the cheapest way to go, is about $209 from Amazon. So you're not going to go break anybody's bank putting in the largest storage device. Now, by the way, you can buy a 1 terabyte hard drive for $209. So you might as well buy an 8 terabyte hard drive. And let me mention this too. I've been accumulating files for more than 30 years. And if you're starting right now, unless you are a teenager or very young, you're probably never going to fill up an 8 terabyte drive. Now, you could go start downloading movies and try to converting your collection of DVDs and old videotapes into your computer, which is what some people do actually. And an 8 terabyte drive may not even be enough to handle it all. But given the real world of genealogy and what you want to save, most people never get to that point. A flash drive, okay? A lot of people carry around little flash drives, thumb drives they call them. They have other names for them. To get a 1 terabyte flash drive today costs $2,700. That's the cheapest one I could find with a 1 terabyte flash drive. Now, you will find online for sale 1 terabyte flash drives for like $50. These are not real. They are a fraud. They are really not real. And you've got to be really careful about that because there's a lot of that going around. Even on Amazon, they just don't seem to have picked up on that yet. But yeah, they're still really expensive flash drives. But the price on these is coming down dramatically. The fact that a 1 terabyte flash drive exists is actually an interesting fact because they didn't exist just a short time ago. And what's happening in the memory world right now with Intel, and they have a thing called Optane, and it's a new memory, three-dimensional memory storage. If that takes off, then a 1 terabyte flash drive is going to be like $50 or $25, and you're going to see 13, 14, 15 terabyte flash drives. There is actually a 13 terabyte flash drive that's on the market today. It's like $8,000 or something like $13,000, something like that. I don't know. But anyway, there's some weird stuff. But flash drives are the future. Hard drives are really kind of on their way out. Right now, the cheapest way is hard drive. Now, what about online storage? Well, right now, for one computer system and all of the hard drives attached to it, unlimited storage, meaning really truly unlimited. Some of them say unlimited storage, and you read the fine print, and it says we only support up to 1 terabyte of storage. So that's not unlimited. Unlimited means you take everything you can get, like a 8 terabyte hard drive plus everything else. And the answer is there really are some systems out there that will store everything on one computer for $50 a year. So that's now into the realm of where that becomes an extremely good option. Now, the problem with online storage is that if you die and nobody pays for it, or you lose your password, or even that anybody knows it's there, then it's gone. It can be lost. So there's a lot of kind of cooperative things that have to go on with family members to keep all this going. Now, one thing I can say for absolute sure, and I don't think I can go back without hitting it. I'm sorry, I keep getting the wrong thing. Here we go. I'll have to just say it. Prices are going to go down like a falling elevator when the cable broke. They are just going to keep dropping. In the time that I've been preparing this, the average asking price for an 8 terabyte hard drive dropped from $239 to $209. And I would expect them to drop again to the $189 range for an 8 terabyte. Now, are there 10 terabyte hard drives or larger hard drives out there on the market coming up? The answer is no, because they're really now starting to compete with the flash drives. And so that the days of the bigger and bigger hard drives, they'll go up for a sort of period of time, but eventually the flash drives, which are more reliable, don't take as much energy to run, and are infinitely faster than hard drives, will will eventually take over the whole market. So we'll just watch. Flash drive technology has taken some time to get some traction, but they're getting moving. Now, most of the genealogy database programs allow you to attach photos and documents. So as you attach a document, meaning you designate that this document goes with this person on your database, then that is automatically organized, that document. You can go back and find that document simply by going back to that person. Um, you don't have to have a folder with the surname on it where you put all your documents, or it doesn't have to be color-coded. All of that stuff goes out the window. You basically have finding everything through your database program. And so here is a list of sources, that thing. So if you attach the sources, now the word sources is used two different ways. A source meaning where you found the document, and the document itself. And so we're kind of using it in both ways in our genealogical jargon world. So what we're talking about here of attaching a source is telling us where you got the document, but also showing us a copy of the document if that's appropriate, or letting us know where we can go to look at a copy of the document. So that's what we're talking about here when we're talking about attaching sources. So you can attach photos and documents as media. Now here in the Family Search Family Tree, this is a screenshot of the memories section where we're showing photographs attached to an individual. In this case, Thomas Parkinson, is my great-great-great-grandfather. And then there are documents attached to that same person, and that's the Family Search Memories program. And the database programs automatically organize all of those files and images. So you don't have to worry about how you're going to organize it. It's not an issue anymore. The issue is just attaching them and tagging them and identifying them and putting them into files into the database so that they are automatically can be found just by going through your pedigree and looking for people that you're wanting to find in your pedigree. Now, if you're going to do this on your own, off of something like Family Search Family Tree or another program, any database program, then the simplest way to keep all this together is to put all of your files, all your digitized documents, all the files that you intend to attach to somebody on that family tree in one file on your computer. You can have as many subfolders as you like. I think that's kind of a silly idea, but you're trying to do the work that the computer does. The key here is naming those files so that the name has some relationship to what you're doing with that file. So if you're attaching a death certificate for somebody named John Smith, then you want to put the title of it as John Smith Death Certificate, so that you get some clue as to what that file is. But then you're going to attach that file to the database program. The reason of having them all in one file folder is that if you upgrade your program, or if you move to a new program, or if you want to transfer and back up all that information, you don't have to go searching all over your computer for those files. They're all in one folder. And so by moving that one folder to a hard drive, or one folder to a flash drive, or by attaching a new program to that one folder, then you can find all of the documents that you have that you're using. If you have them scattered all over the computer, then you'll not be able to find those documents or back them up efficiently. Now let's look at Thomas Parkinson, for example. All the data is stored in his detail page. So everything about this individual that we know is now on his detail page. That includes a life sketch, any kind of other information that might be important, and all of the supporting documentation about this individual. And we also have his memories, so we have his photographs and anything if he lived during a time when there were photographs, and we have any documents and stories and text files and anything else that we may have about this particular individual. So all the supporting documentation and photos is in his memory section, and that helps us let the computer store and find that information, and then we don't have to keep going back through files. This is where I get this kind of in a practical way, is helping people in libraries, and like in Mesa in the Family History Library, or here in Provo at the BYU Family History Library, and they bring in this rolling suitcase full of documents. And when I go to try to ask what they need help on, then they're pulling out three-ring binders and piles of paper, and they're spending half an hour just thumbing through all this, trying to find the documents that are pertinent. And I just, this is the problem. If we put all of that information into uh, the programs, all they would have to do is pull up their file. If it were in an individual program like Roots Magic or Ancestral Quest or Family Tree Maker, Family Tree Builder, any of these programs out there or online, then we can look at all the information. We don't have to sit there and thumb back and forth through a pile of sheet protected documents in a three-ring binder, which, by the way, you can tell I'm not happy when I see that, but anyway. And my rule basically is don't do what the computer can do better than you can do. If the computer can do it better than you, use the computer, use its storage capability, use its searching capability, use its ability to find the things rather than you looking through piles of paper and documents and three-ring notebooks and things like that. So follow the rules. First of all, use a genealogical database program to organize, store, tag, and accumulate all of your documents and information. Let the computer do its job. Don't sit there and try to do the things that the computer can do. The computer doesn't care if you have the files color-coded. They don't care if it's in 5 different file folders, that whether you have all of your your father's line in one folder and your mother's line in another folder. The computer really doesn't care if that's in 2 different folders or not. It's you that cares. The computer is still going to find it if it's attached to your database program. So back up your files frequently so you don't lose all this data and all this information that you've accumulated. And then the good idea here is to also plan ahead and make your peace with your family members. Find somebody who will actually understand and appreciate what you've done, and make sure that they know that the information needs to be preserved, even if you haven't been able to do that during your lifetime. And also, I would encourage people constantly to use more than one backup method. Don't put the old proverbial all your eggs in one basket, so when you drop the basket, you break the whole bunch. What you need to do is have multiple ways of backing up. Flash drives seem like a marvelous tool for backing up information until you lose it. Hard drives are marvelous devices until they crash, and online storage is wonderful until the internet goes down and you can't get online to get your information. So use all of these. Don't use just one of them. And remember, as I mentioned at the beginning, archive and maintain your original paper documents and photos, and follow the rules and suggestions of the Library of Congress and other reputable institutions for preserving those documents, and make arrangements for the disposition of your originals if you die or become incapacitated. So who gets it is important. Okay, well, thanks for watching today. Remind everybody that these presentations are recorded and are uploaded to the BYU Family History Library YouTube channel. And remember to subscribe to our channel so that you can receive notice of the new videos that are uploaded if you wish to do that. But we'd ask you to subscribe anyway, because then we can have more people viewing more videos, and we'll have more incentive to do this and sit around and record these. Thanks.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for the wonderful webinar, James. We really appreciate all the work that you put into preparing these and passing along all this information. If you didn't get a chance at the beginning to answer our polls here at the bottom of the screen, feel free to do so now, and let us know of any feedback that you have for today's presentation, if there's anything that we missed or that you feel that could be covered a little bit better, or if you have any suggestions for future topics of webinars, that would be great as well. As James said, feel free to look at our subscribe to our YouTube channel for the videos, and you can go to our website to look at our schedule for the upcoming webinars, and we hope that we will be able to see you next time. Thank you for joining us.